So, a video was released recently. It's put together, I think by Now This. Kyle Kulinski put a link to it on his Secular Talk channel. And I watched it on a Kyle Kulinski video. Thought this was great work. It's about media bias and Bernie Sanders in particularly. Now, this is not trying to sway anyone necessarily to Bernie Sanders, as I've been vocal about on my channel. Big difference between me and Kyle Kulinski. Kyle Kulinski almost worships the ground Bernie walks on. No disrespect, but he's clearly well into Bernie Sanders' camp. I don't think Bernie has got complete ill will for the country in mind. I just don't agree with all of his policies. However, I do think his basic message does have a lot of truth to it. There is massive income and wealth inequality, and no, I don't want to hear, well, that's because they worked and worked and worked their way to the top. No, some people did honestly go nose to the grindstone, wheel and deal, and, do what they needed to do in an honest way to build a nice fortune for themselves. And there's a lot of other people who didn't use capitalism, they used crony capitalism. They used legalized bribery, and they used a lot of underhanded tactics to keep little people down, keep them from advancing while building their own castle. Okay? That is a fact. And unfortunately, one of the disadvantages to the right-wing philosophies is that you open the door when you restrict some regulations to more crony capitalism. That's the issue with trickle-down economics. That's the issue with the cutting taxes. I agree, if we were all honest people, it would work exactly the way Republicans say it would work. It would work exactly the way trickle-down economics is supposed to work. Unfortunately, some do the right thing, some don't. You open the door for crony capitalism. And so that's why I agree with Bernie that there needs to be restrictions in place. But some of the programs he's for, I just can't quite get behind. Now, does that mean that I don't understand why he's saying it? Of course not. When he says that we should eliminate the student loan debt, I completely understand why he's saying that. Because student loan debt has burdened a lot of people down in this country. They basically had no other choice if they wanted that college degree than to go into debt to get it. Now, unfortunately, I do think there's a lot of people who made very poor choices with what they got student loan debt over. For example, in a society where you have a job market and you're going and getting a loan to get thousands and thousands and thousands upon thousands of dollars to become an artistic major of some sort, and there's not really a job market for that, I can't blame you for trying to chase your passion. But at the same time, if you knew that was going to be a long road to hoe, and you weren't naturally gifted in that in the first place, was it really the smartest of ideas? Probably not. And at some point, you do have to hold people accountable for their own poor actions. But at the same time, there's also a lot of people out there who just went to college, got loaded down with debt, and they're having a hard time paying it off because of bad free trade deals and everything else. The job market has become so bad. The wages aren't there. I know they're trying to say we've got more people employed now. The wages are growing, but in all honesty, people are still in a lot of cases having to work sometimes 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. So while things may be improving to some degree, we're definitely not to the point we were back in the 50s and 60s where you could have, that one full-time job and have a decent life. The middle class is still very destroyed in this country as we speak. Okay? So I see why Bernie wants to take that burden off people. I see why he wants to wipe away healthcare debt from people. Because as we've discussed on this channel, the healthcare system is a freaking mess. It's a mess and it's corrupt. And all they're wanting to do is get money off people. And they're using your health as the tool to do it. So I understand why he wants to do it. Unfortunately, while I can see the argument for Medicare for all, I haven't seen a valid argument on how these other programs are just going to be able to pay for themselves. I know he said the free public college, for example, a Wall Street speculation tax, I think, So if someone wants to point me to those articles that prove how he's going to pay for all this stuff, great. And I get, and one thing, and the reason why I'm thinking that there's definitely not a good plan laid out is because usually when there is a good plan on how to pay for it, I hear Kyle Kulinski, I hear Jimmy Dore, I hear other people pointing out those facts. In this one, the only thing I seem to be able to hear is that, oh, it's a winning message for people. Well, of course it's a winning message for people. They're not going to go against that message. I'm just not hearing any details on how we're going to pay for it without exploding the debt a lot higher than it already is. And naturally, I do think we should, if we need to borrow money to fund certain things, do it. Unfortunately, we are already to a point, because of crony capitalism and borrowing money to fund wars and everything else, we need to figure a way to start paying some of this debt down. But we also need to be taking the money that we need and funneling it into things the people need, not the military-industrial complex, the crony capitalists, and the lobbyists want. So that's a key difference there. So that's why I have some of the issue with some of the things Bernie pitches. I completely understand his message. I don't want anyone to take me out of context there and say that I don't agree with what he's saying and that there's definitely a problem. I just have some issue on how exactly are you going to go about it? How are you actually going to fix the problem? Where is all this going to come from? That's some of my bigger issues with Bernie Sanders. Now, one thing I've definitely not gotten behind is the whole Green New Deal. I understand that a lot of people try to say it's based off the New Deal, and I would support a type of New Deal, a jobs program. You wouldn't get a single argument from me on that one. But the Green New Deal, some of the things that have been slipped in there, and I know that people try to write off Fox News, but unfortunately this stuff is in the bill, basically about giving people money even if they don't want to work. What? Really? No. I'm sorry. I am not a everyone deserves a trophy person. If you're not going to get off your butt, go to work, you shouldn't get money. Okay? Now I understand Andrew Yang has some philosophy about that as well, giving people so much money a month. And you know what? If it's feasible and can be done, and it's basically reimbursing people, kind of like a stimulus package or something, that's one thing. But to just guarantee all this money, to people, even if they don't want to work, to me, I don't think we should be incentivizing people to not work. Because the more you incentivize people to not work, the more you're going to increase businesses to go to automation. The more you increase automation, that means there's more robots doing jobs than people. The more you have robots doing jobs than people, you run out of people to pay taxes. And when you run out of people to pay taxes because robots don't pay taxes, you're going to start running out of people to fund these programs. And you're not just going to be able to expect all the super wealthy to maintain it. They'll freaking leave. So there's definitely some issues there. That's why I'm not what a lot of people consider liberals and whatnot. But I digress. I'm just making the case that that's really where a lot of my issues are with Bernie Sanders. I agree with his underlying message on a lot of things. I just don't agree that some of his policies are as feasible and able to be implemented as he thinks they are. And if anyone could prove me wrong on that, by all means, please do it. I just haven't seen the actual facts laid out that all these things are as easy peasy and simple as pie as Bernie lays them out to be. Okay? But for the majority of a lot of the things he says, I don't disagree with him. And that's why a lot of Bernie voters actually went for Trump in 2016. Because a lot of Bernie's messages about the corruption, and the deep state and how bad this whole system's working against the American people. So I have no disagreement with that whatsoever. And with that being said, again, this is not a video to try to sway you to or from Bernie. We're going to dig into it a little bit more after the clip, but I just want to play this clip to show what the media tries to portray about Bernie Sanders and what you actually see from Bernie if you do your research on Bernie and his personality. And then we'll dive into this a little bit further. So let's take a look.
Bernie is back, getting into the presidential race.
Democrats like somebody new, and that is not going to be Bernie Sanders this time.
It's really hard to imagine who the Bernie Sanders voter is at this point.
Bernie Sanders, fall back. Please get away from us.
Hey, Senator, great to see you. Thank you for doing this.
He has a kind of gruff, curmudgeon-y side that is, of course, well known. He doesn't actually smile that much.
It's almost like Bernie can't tell the difference between kids and adults.
All right, I think you're dumb. I think you're dumb if you don't sit down and learn how to read and write. No, you were not born stupid. Come here. The only way I think you're dumb, I think when you think you're dumb, because you're not.
I think you're disheveled, you're unlikable, and you're pushy, and I don't think you should be leading anybody.
How old is too old?
I think the issue is, do you seem like you're in the contemporary world? He's a socialist from the 1950s yelling at people in the same screechy voice, without smiling, without any kind of personal connection. He looked like the angry man in the center of the stage saying, "Get off my lawn." And I don't think that's a good look for the Democratic Party.
I see him as sort of a not pro-woman candidate.
You may have heard the term Bernie bro. The Bernie bro, right? Somebody who's a bit younger, whiter, I think, than the overall Democratic primary.
I'm with my magnificent vanilla brother named Bernie Sanders. That's Brother Bernie Sanders we talking about. That's Brother Bernie Sanders we talking about.
Socialism has been a manifest disaster.
Alec would still be here today if I had known that I could come to Canada.
Alex Smith died after trying to ration a vial of insulin when he couldn't afford more.
So his idea about, free health care, he has seen the manifest atrocities that have occurred under socialism.
$1,000 got me 6 months of insulin for my son. That's still less than what I pay a month in the United States.
Gloria Steinem has suggested that younger women are supporting Bernie Sanders so they can meet boys.
Hello, Bernie. We lost our condo, got foreclosed on because of my medical bills.
I don't understand young women who support him.
I trust that Bernie Sanders is going to fight for health care and to lower prescription costs.
Of all the presidential candidates, you're the one that I trust.
Thank you so much for what you're doing. You're just giving us a hug. Thank you. And we got your back.
I think he comes off as mean. I think he's disparaging.
I don't want to overpromise here.
Bernie Sanders makes my skin crawl, and I can't even identify for you what exactly it is.
Bernie Sanders has done nothing between 2016 and today.
Thank you for everything you've done these last few years. You've helped to reset our political discourse, and are demanding that we center our politics around justice and equity. I am hopeful because right now, there is a mass movement of people from all over this country, rising up.
Thank you all very much. It ain't Bernie, it is us.
If we come together, we will win.
People always say, "Oh, you're being too vocal."
Hey, Bernie, you don't have to yell.
I don't feel I'm being vocal enough. We are not being vocal enough. When is enough enough?
He sounds very, very shouty.
Louder. Yeah, we gotta get louder. How many kids are gonna have to make this sacrifice and die? How can you sleep at night knowing that kids can't afford insulin? How is that possible?
It's not right.
I mean, that's pretty powerful video there. And again, agree or disagree with some of the things that Bernie wants. And you don't have to necessarily jump behind him, support him, but just breaking things down step by step here in this video, for example. So, some of the things that they may mention of. He's the old angry man on the front lawn. Yes, Bernie has that outright when he's giving a big speech a lot of times. Serious, a little bit louder, and then you got the Tim Ryan clip. Oh, gee, Bernie, you don't have to shout. See, that's just the problem, Tim Ryan. That's just your problem, man. That's what's getting over because people are tired of your status quo crap. I've said it once, and I'll say it again. It's time for the status quo to go. Okay? It's not working. It's not doing it for the American people. They want that loud voice speaking out against your ilk, saying, get out of the way, son, because we need to get work done here for the people. Whether their plan actually does the best for the American people or whatever, it doesn't matter. That's why Trump did so good in 2016. He was the voice speaking out against, as he put it, the swamp, as I call it, the status quo. Some people refer to it as the deep state. He was speaking out. And he wasn't timid and he wasn't quiet. I have to say this. I wasn't exactly a Ben Carson supporter in 2016, but I did think there were some things that I liked that Ben Carson was talking about during the 2016 election cycle. I never fully jumped behind him, but I did like some of the things I heard from him. But one serious problem that I had with Ben Carson was how quiet and how soft and how mellow-toned he always spoke. Whenever he gave a speech, he spoke like this. He spoke so softly. He spoke so quietly. And I couldn't support it. I wanted someone who would get out there and just drive the nail home. Call it out. Be loud. Cuss if you need to. I don't care. It's time someone call these jokers out. I mean, really? So, that was a huge plus for me. You think it's not a huge plus for Bernie when you get a guy out there calling out all this corruption, calling out the problem with, big pharma, the military-industrial complex, and then he's out there basically at the, with the megaphone, getting in with the protests with the unions, getting down the foxhole with the American people in a lot of instances? Of course it is. It's helping him out big time. You people have it ass backwards here. And the bigger point of why I share this video is they're not just doing it to Bernie. They're not just doing it to Bernie. They're doing it to Tulsi Gabbard in a lot of ways. They've done it to so many people who are pro-people, pro-American in a lot of their stances. Or just simply outsiders that don't support the status quo's agenda. For example, someone else I've made mention of on this channel, and I really wish he could have stayed in the race, Richard Ojeda. Richard Ojeda. They wouldn't give this man the time of day on a news network 6 months to a year ago or however you want to look at it. Okay, it hadn't quite been a year yet because he tried to run the midterms in 2018, but just after the midterms ended and he didn't get elected, okay, and he almost won in that Republican district, but he didn't win the election. He announced, okay, I'm running in 2020. He was like the second candidate to announce. I think Andrew Yang was the first. He was the second, okay? Meanwhile, these news networks, well, Joe Biden announced. Could Hillary Clinton sneak one in again? Amy Klobuchar, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, blah, 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 blah. All these people who have not announced. And we're just going to sit around and talk about, could they announce? Could they run? How good would they do? Would they win? Could they beat Donald Trump? Would they lose to Donald Trump? Blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, you've got a guy who's announced and you ignore him. You won't speak of him. You won't talk to him. You won't bring him on. Credit to TYT. They actually did. And I think he did get to make a couple of appearances on MSNBC, perhaps. But meanwhile, a previous job I had worked at, they had Fox News on all the time. All the time. So I heard plenty of Fox News. And I heard every day, Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden, 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 Clinton, 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 Harris, 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 Booker, 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 Klobuchar, 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 Klobuchar. It was non-stop. Not one word about Richard Ojeda. Ever. Of course, they threw Bernie out there. They couldn't ignore Bernie. He did too good in 2016. So obviously they had to acknowledge Bernie this time around. But if you rewind the clocks back to 2016, that's what got Ed Schultz fired, basically, from MSNBC. He wanted to cover Bernie Sanders. And I don't remember, did Ed Schultz get fired from MSNBC or did he just quit because they wouldn't let him cover Bernie Sanders? Either way, he said himself before his death that MSNBC said, no, you can't talk about Bernie. You can't talk about Bernie. You got to talk about the almighty goddess herself, Hillary Clinton. You can't talk about Bernie. Nah, that's just not going to cut it. So, no, shut up. Zip your lip and keep quiet. Because Hillary Clinton's going to be the nominee. We're in the tank for her. The DNC's in the tank for her. Every other news network's in the tank for her. So fall in line, shut up, have a seat, and just pretend Bernie Sanders is some old crazy kook and ignore him. They do this with all the people who don't fit their narrative, their corporatist, crony capitalism narrative. All these corporatist politicians and the news media just kisses their ass up one side and down the other. Period. So again, this is not to try to get anyone on Bernie's train or off Bernie's train. This is just exposing the corruption here. There are a lot of people, agree or disagree with them, who genuinely have their heartfelt reasons why they do agree with Bernie Sanders. I'm not going to hold that against them. I don't have to agree with them on everything, but I understand where they're coming from. Some of these issues have really impacted people in a way that it hasn't impacted me. And while I'm sitting here looking at it from the standpoint of, is it really that feasible to be done? They're looking at it from a standpoint, I don't care. I just need it done because this system has ruined my life. It's caused my kids to die because he had to try to ration off insulin. I can't afford my medication, so I need someone who's actually going to fight for it. And unfortunately, now that Tulsi has kind of flipped behind a Buttigieg plan, the system that they're proposing wouldn't work anyway. So who's the only other candidate really pushing for a real, true Medicare for all single payer system? That'd be Bernie Sanders at this point. So if that's an issue that really hits home for you and you really need it and it has impacted your life that much that you support Bernie Sanders, I'm not holding that against you. I can completely understand. In my issue, I can't afford to go to a doctor, but I'm not exactly a super ill person either where I have to go and get medication every month and so on and so forth. So it just doesn't impact me that way. My issue is more or less trying to find a president who would be more pro-jobs. That was a big part of the reason why I went the way I went in 2016, and the fact that I just could not, under any circumstances, bring myself to vote for Hillary Clinton. Had nothing to do with the fact she's a woman, because I have not too many issues with Tulsi Gabbard. The Medicare for all flip, I'm not a fan of that though. So that's my point. If these are issues that hit home for you, I understand completely why you support Bernie Sanders. Okay? But the media is going to try to bury him and anyone else like him that doesn't support his agenda. And I get there's a lot of people out there who don't like President Trump, and some of you are probably not going to like what I'm about to say, but in all fairness, they've used a lot of these same tactics on him because surprisingly enough, he has said a lot of things that don't support traditional Republican agendas, traditional Republican stances. Traditionally, Republicans agree with free trade like Hitler agreed with killing Jews. I know that might be a bad comparison to make there, but it's the truth. Republicans were just fawning all over these free trade agreements. Oh, they loved them. They loved them because other crony capitalist buddies loved them. And a lot of those Republicans had a little bit of money themselves, had some businesses, or their donors were So, of course, they took care of their people and said, okay, yeah, we're going to make it so that you can make a lot more money. And, of course, eventually that corruption invaded the Democratic Party. And then you had two parties who were just as crooked as they could possibly be, supporting all these lopsided trade deals. So that's just the history of it. Okay? But then Trump gets out there and says, yeah, NAFTA was a piece of crap. Should have never been signed. Should have never been signed. Oh. Well, what would you do about some of these trade deals? I'd tariff tax them. And the Republicans are all sitting going, oh. No, you didn't just say that. We don't tariff tax in the Republican Party. We don't do that. How dare you? What's wrong with you? You can't be running on our platform. Something's wrong with you. You're not a conservative. That's the argument that was made. Okay? So, Trump had a lot of and of course, what did the media attack him on other than some of the language that he has used that is obviously controversial? The good things he pitched, they pretended were bad things. When he said he wanted to get out of wars, oh, what's wrong with him? We must have peace in the Middle East. They'd bring on every war hawk possible, from Bill Kristol to whoever, to sit there and say, yeah, he's an idiot. We need to just stay everywhere in the world. Matter of fact, no, I don't need to just stay there. We need to build a few new bases because we need to have a bigger presence in the world because we're not quite enough of a world police yet. No, we've actually got to keep building upon it. That was what they wanted to criticize him from. Even what a lot of people would call more left news outlets, I think they're crony, corrupt left news outlets. They're definitely corporatist. Certainly not anything for the American people, MSNBC, CNN, and the ilk of that nature. They're not. They're simply not. Okay? But that's the argument they wanted to attack him with. Bill Maher and everyone else, it's always, they don't agree with that aspect. Well, guess what? That's definitely an issue where Trump was at least giving the right message. He was right when he said those things. And you pretend he's wrong. So this media is just so corrupt and so out of touch with what the American people want, and they just keep pushing propaganda to no end to fund the war machine, fund the corruption, fund the trouble. Just keep it up. We don't want your taxpayer money to do anything for you. We want it to just keep on funding our war machine. We've got to sell all this stuff and have a war to use it in and blah blah blah. So, again, agree or disagree with Bernie, I think this video just illustrates how much the media warps fact and fiction and tries to get you to believe that fiction is fact. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Independent Report. If you liked the video, please give us a thumbs up and like the video. Also, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to ask or topics you'd like us to cover, please drop a comment in the comment box below. And also, please subscribe to the channel. And if you do subscribe, ring that bell so you'll stay up to date when we drop new videos and you'll get notifications of it. And also, please support us on Patreon. Funds are going to be used to grow and improve this channel so we can reach more and more people and spread the message that the mainstream media doesn't want to tell people. We hope you'll tune in next time.